Next, Mr. Chameleon and The Last Penny Murder Case. Tonight, we again present the famous Mr. Chameleon of Central Police Headquarters in his famous cases of crime and murder, brought to you by the makers of genuine Bayer aspirin. Mr. Chameleon, as you know, is the famous and dreaded detective who frequently uses a disguise to track down a killer, a disguise which at all times is recognized by the audience. Tonight, we give you Mr. Chameleon in The Last Penny Murder Case. There is nothing more ominous than great anger. It can be far more frightening than all the ranting in the world. And Alma Ashley's anger is quiet and deadly as she faces her husband, Wendell Ashley, in the luxurious drawing room of their gray stone house. And she says to the dignified, harassed-looking man,
"What's this all about, Wendell? Why didn't you tell me that you were planning on taking a long trip?"
Who did tell you, Alma?
Your manservant, Rogers. I, your own wife, had to learn it from a servant. From all the luggage you're taking, I presume you're going to be gone for some time?
For good, Alma. I'm leaving for good. I never want to see you or your precious children again.
Wendell.
You only married me for my money. You and your fine children.
Leave my children out of this. Cecil and Judith, they're good children. They're as devoted to you as if you were their own father, instead of their stepfather.
Yes, they're devoted to me. They're devoted to my money. Not one of you has given me any love or any happiness. Well, I'm getting rid of you now. But before I go, I'll do the decent thing. I'll make a settlement on you.
On Cecil and Judith, too?
On Cecil and Judith, too. Peter Glade, my secretary, will be here any minute to handle the transaction. So call them in. Call in the parasites.
Cecil, Judith, come in here, darlings.
Yes, Mother. Peter Glade's just arrived.
Tell him we're in the drawing room. Wendell, you're right. I did marry you for security. Not for myself, but for my children.
Very noble of you, I'm sure. But here they are, and Peter, my faithful secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Ashley.
And Cecil and Judith with their tongues hanging out. Well, children, I'm going away. But before I go, I'm going to make a final bequest to your mother and you.
Wendell, are you really leaving us?
Yes, Judith, I'm really leaving you. And here's your settlement. Alma, Cecil, Judith, the same for all of you.
What?
Mother, he gave me a penny.
He gave us all a penny.
Wendell, what is this?
He's playing some sort of joke, Mother.
Oh, no, Cecil, it's no joke. This is the last penny you'll ever get from me.
Why, you cheap old fraud.
Cecil, don't touch your stepfather.
Thank you, Peter. You're my devoted friend as well as my secretary. And for my devoted friend, I have a little present in cash, because I like to give cash. Here, Peter. Here are $20,000 bills.
Mr. Ashley.
Wendell, you give him $20,000 and my children 1 penny?
Yes, Alma.
You're a crazy old man. A crazy, wicked old man.
It's this secretary, Peter Glade, who made trouble between us, Wendell. He's used undue influence on you, I know.
Nonsense. No, Alma, this is final. $20,000 to Peter and a penny to each of you. The last penny you'll ever get out of me.
I could kill you for this.
Cecil, leave your stepfather alone. I'm warning you, Cecil. Don't lay a finger on him.
Thank you again, Peter. In fact, if you don't mind, you'd better spend the night here in the house with me. I'm leaving in the morning, but tonight something tells me I'll badly need protection.
The following morning at Central Police Headquarters, the Commissioner of Police is talking to Mr. Chameleon, the great detective. And Mr. Chameleon leans forward with quickening interest as the Commissioner says,
Here's an ugly report that came in this morning, Chameleon. A man was stabbed to death as he lay sleeping. The knife plunged into his back and left there. And in one of the most beautiful homes in New York, Wendell Ashley's.
Wendell Ashley? Was Wendell Ashley murdered?
No, Chameleon, Ashley's secretary, Peter Glade. It seems that Glade was sleeping in an anteroom next to Ashley's room.
Who reported it?
Wendell Ashley himself. So shaken he could hardly talk. He discovered the body at 9 o'clock this morning.
Did he give any details?
No, Chameleon. He was so upset he was practically incoherent. In fact, he said he'd barricaded himself in his room. So if I were you, I wouldn't lose any time. You and Detective Dave Arnold get up there immediately.
And so, a little later, we find Mr. Chameleon and Detective Dave Arnold examining the rigid body of Peter Glade. And Chameleon is saying,
Look at this knife, Dave. Common kitchen knife. Anyone could have brought it here from the kitchen. And they plunged it into his back so swiftly that he had no time to cry out.
Yeah. Nice-looking man, isn't he, Mr. Chameleon?
Mm-hmm. Why'd you say it like that, as if it bothered you?
I don't know, but there's something about him that...
Well, he looks like the movie actor Carl Renshaw.
Yeah, I guess that's what struck me as familiar. Well, who do you want to talk to first, Mr. Chameleon? Poor old Wendell Ashley's still in his room.
Well, first I want to question his wife. She's in here, Dave. You go down and question the servants. See if any one of them has seen that knife before.
Okay, Mr. Chameleon.
Mrs. Ashley?
Yes, you must be Mr. Chameleon. Have you seen my poor husband? Would he let you in his room?
Not yet. He seems overwhelmed, Mrs. Ashley.
Well, can you blame him, Mr. Chameleon? My husband's not young. In fact, not quite balanced. I dread to think what this murder of his secretary, Peter Glade, will do to him.
Well, you seem more concerned about your husband, Mrs. Ashley, than about the murdered man, Peter Glade.
Oh, no, poor Peter. We all liked Peter.
Did you?
Oh, yes, indeed we did, Mr. Chameleon. But Wendell, my husband, hasn't been well. He was going on a long trip. I'd been urging him to go for months.
Oh, you'd been urging him to go, Mrs. Ashley?
Oh, yes. I knew I'd miss him, but his health came first.
Mrs. Ashley, it's the murdered man, Peter Glade, that I want to hear about. Yet you insist on talking to me about your husband. Why?
Because my first concern is Wendell. The shock of this thing might really unbalance him.
Tell me, Mrs. Ashley, do you know of any reason why Peter Glade should have been murdered?
That's a strange question.
Peter Glade was murdered for some reason, Mrs. Ashley. You say you all liked him. Why was he murdered?
I don't understand, Mr. Chameleon. No one in this house would want to kill Peter.
Not even the servants?
Well, the servants weren't here last night.
I see. How long had Peter worked as your husband's secretary?
Why, for years.
Mother? What is this man doing? He acts like he thinks one of us killed Peter.
Oh, Cecil, darling. Mr. Chameleon, this is my son, Cecil.
How do you do, Cecil? Why do you think I believe one of your family killed Peter Glade?
Well, we didn't.
He was your stepfather's secretary, and nobody but members of your family were in the house, as near as I can see, when he was murdered.
Nobody here had any reason to kill him. That's certain. We were all very fond of him.
You seem very sure of that, Cecil. But since I don't seem able to get much out of you or your mother, I think I'd better talk to your stepfather.
Oh, Mr. Chameleon.
Yes, Cecil?
Did Mother tell you that my stepfather wasn't exactly, rational? He might say anything, Mr. Chameleon. You can't depend on him.
Well, that must make it difficult for all of you. But I'm a detective, Cecil. I'm used to sorting out the truth from lies. Mr. Ashley. Mr. Ashley.
Mr. Chameleon, don't go in there.
No, why not? And who are you?
I'm Judith, Mr. Ashley's stepdaughter. I thought you should know something before you question my stepfather.
What should I know, Judith?
That he's slightly unbalanced.
I already knew that. I've been told it often enough. You must all have had quite a difficult time with him.
Oh, we have.
His behavior with his murdered secretary, Peter Glade, was slightly unbalanced, too.
I suppose you mean his giving Peter $20,000 in cash, in $1,000 bills. I agree, Mr. Chameleon. That was a crazy thing to do.
That is not what I meant, since I didn't know about the $20,000. But you're quite right. That was a very unbalanced thing to do. When did your stepfather give Peter Glade the $20,000?
Last night.
Peter Glade had it with him when he went to bed?
Well, he must have. I think Peter may have been murdered for that money.
You're probably right again, Miss Judith, since none of that $20,000 was in Peter Glade's wallet or his clothes when we examined his body.
Of course, none of us would need it.
Oh, certainly not, Miss Judith. You're well provided for. Thank you. You've been very helpful. Mr. Ashley, you let me in, please? This is Chameleon from Central Police Headquarters.
You're sure you're a detective?
Yes, Mr. Ashley. I'll show you my credentials.
No. I believe you. Come in.
Thank you.
You must excuse my odd behavior, Mr. Chameleon, but I've been badly shaken. Poor Peter, who was my mainstay, my protection. Now he's gone.
Why do you think you needed protection, Mr. Ashley?
Oh, various reasons. I'm so dazed I feel ill. And I'm sure that my family have told you I behave oddly.
Well, that gift of $20,000 cash that you gave your secretary, Peter Glade, well, you must admit that was rather a quixotic gesture.
Why? Why shouldn't I have given Peter the money? He was a faithful friend and worker. Besides, he needed it desperately.
What do you mean he needed it desperately?
Peter Glade had a son, Mr. Chameleon. A son that very few people knew about but me.
Go on, please, Mr. Ashley.
Peter needed that money to defend his son from a criminal charge, and he needed it immediately.
What's his son's name?
I'm not sure, Mr. Chameleon. It was Henry, I think.
What was the criminal charge against him?
I don't know that either.
Are you telling me that you took Peter Glade's word for all this? How do you know he even had a son?
Because I trusted him completely, Mr. Chameleon. Nothing will convince me he was putting something over on me.
Mr. Ashley, do you trust your wife and stepchildren as much as you trusted your secretary, Peter Glade?
That is a question that I'd rather not answer, Mr. Chameleon. But I shall miss Peter. I'll miss him terribly.
Mr. Ashley, the $20,000 that you gave him is gone. Do you think he was murdered for that money?
Yes.
By whom?
By his son. That's it. His own son had him murdered by that gang that he was mixed up in.
Your house was locked up last night. How could anyone get in?
I don't know, but...
Mr. Ashley, did you make up this story about Peter's son because you're afraid to tell me whom you really suspect?
No.
Now, Mr. Ashley, you must not hesitate to speak. I warn you...
Mr. Chameleon? Mr. Chameleon?
Just a minute, Mr. Ashley. What's happened, Dave?
There's a man in the library who wants to see you, Mr. Chameleon. It's very important. The police commissioner sent him in a squad car from headquarters.
I'll be back, Mr. Ashley. Who's the man, Dave?
A guy named Bill Redmond, a paper hanger. He was working here in the Ashley house yesterday, late in the afternoon.
He's got information about Peter Glade's murder?
Evidently. I guess he didn't want to come up here, but the commissioner thought he should.
This may be the break we needed, Dave.
He was right in the library here, sitting on the edge of his chair when I left him, but... Mr. Chameleon, he's gone.
Gone?
Yes, he was sitting on that chair.
Well, he can't have gone far. Go down this hall, perhaps. Come along, Dave.
Get out of here. Get out of here. If you're going to make trouble.
I've got to see Mr. Chameleon.
That's him, Mr. Chameleon. That's Bill Redmond, the paper hanger.
Wendell Ashley's stepson, Cecil, is trying to push him out the side door. Cecil! Redmond!
What? Oh, yes, Mr. Chameleon.
Leave Mr. Redmond alone, Cecil. What do you mean by tampering with a witness?
A witness of what? He didn't witness any murder.
He has information for me. Haven't you, Mr. Redmond?
Well, Mr. Chameleon.
That dumb clock doesn't have any information.
Mr. Redmond, did you hear that? You're a dumb clock. That's what Cecil here thinks of you, Mr. Redmond.
Oh, yeah? Well, I ain't dumb and I don't scare easy either. And I'm ready to tell you plenty, Mr. Chameleon, and tell you right now.
Mr. Chameleon and the Last Penny murder case continues in just a moment. At the first sign of a cold, before you do anything else, take Bayer aspirin. Here's why. When you have a cold, it's almost invariably accompanied by a headachy, feverish feeling and muscular aches and pains. And it's important to your well-being that you treat these distressing symptoms with a medication that will relieve them quickly. And Bayer aspirin will do this. No matter how you try to stop or shorten a cold, we believe that your own doctor will tell you that this is sound advice. And when you use Bayer aspirin, you'll discover why millions have followed this advice with remarkable results. For Bayer aspirin is ready to go to work in 2 seconds to bring you amazingly quick relief, to make you feel better. In addition, Bayer aspirin's single active ingredient is so gentle to the system, doctors prescribe it even for small children. That's why it's been used by millions of normal people without ill effect. So at the first sign of a cold, before you do anything else, take Bayer aspirin. When you buy, ask for Bayer aspirin, not just for aspirin alone. Get the 100-tablet bottle, and you get Bayer aspirin tablets for less than a penny apiece. And now back to Mr. Chameleon and the Last Penny murder case. The stabbing of Peter Glade, Wendell Ashley's secretary, has stirred up a strange hornet's nest, and Mr. Chameleon has been picking his way through a tissue of lies. But now in the library of the Ashley home, Mr. Chameleon is confronting a man who apparently has important facts about the murder. And he is saying to Bill Redmond, the paper hanger,
Mr. Redmond, I'm depending on you to help me break this murder case. Unlike the stepson Cecil, I do not consider you dumb.
You're not so dumb either, Mr. Chameleon. I saw plenty here in this house yesterday, and I heard plenty, too.
What?
Well, sir, I was papering the hall way at the back, but I could see into the living room. And, boy, they nearly threw a fit when Mr. Ashley gave him that 20 grand. I mean, he gave his secretary, Peter Glade, $20,000 in cash.
Yes, I know.
But that penny business, that's what got me.
What penny business?
Wendell Ashley, he gave his wife and her 2 kids, each of them, a penny.
He handed them each a penny?
Yeah. Told him that was the last penny they ever get out of him.
Now, wait a minute, Bill Redmond. Let me get this straight. Are you telling me that Wendell Ashley cut off his family's income?
That's what he said to him. He called them
Parasites?
Yeah, that was the word. He tells his wife she and the 2 kids have bled him white, but no more. One last penny is all they get from him.
I see.
Then Cecil, the guy that went for me, see? He goes for old Wendell Ashley, but his secretary, Peter Glade, jumps in and protects him. And the next thing I know, I hear on the radio, Peter Glade's been murdered.
Mm-hmm. Well, it all hangs together. All right, thank you, Mr. Redmond. I shall keep in touch with you. If I need you again, I'll let you know.
Okay, Mr. Chameleon, anything I can do.
So, Wendell Ashley did need protection. And Alma Ashley and her children were lying through their teeth when they said they didn't need money. They'd been cut off without a penny. Or rather, a last penny.
Let go of me, you brute!
Mr. Chameleon.
Yes, Dave, what is it?
He's a thief, Mr. Chameleon. Detective Arnold is a thief.
Really, Mrs. Ashley? Dave, why are you a thief?
Because I took these $1,000 bills out of Mrs. Ashley's desk.
Let's see 'em. Well, this must be the $20,000 that Wendell Ashley gave Peter Glade the night before Glade was murdered. Mrs. Ashley, how did this money get in your desk?
Yes, tell him, Mrs. Ashley.
I've already told you, Detective Arnold. I don't know how they got there. I had nothing to do with it.
You mean that someone put these $1,000 bills in your desk, Mrs. Ashley?
They must have.
Sure they did. I happen to know. Mr. Chameleon, she put them in her desk herself.
That's a lie.
You mean she took the money from somewhere else, Dave?
That's it, Mr. Chameleon. I've been watching her. She went into her son Cecil's room and kind of looked around. She went through his bureau drawers and she found this package of bills. Then she sneaked back to her own room and stuck them in her desk.
I see. So, Mrs. Ashley, your son had Peter Glade's money in his bureau.
Well, if he did, it's because someone planted the money on him. Mr. Chameleon, you must believe me. My son couldn't commit a murder.
Well, Cecil seems to be capable of stealing money from a dead man.
He didn't do that either.
Mrs. Ashley, stop and think. You must have believed your son was capable of such a robbery, or you wouldn't have searched his room for the money now, would you?
That still doesn't make Cecil a murderer. And you can't even prove that money belonged to that murdered secretary, Peter Glade.
Well, at the moment, I can't prove anything, Mrs. Ashley. Except that your husband, Wendell Ashley, cut you and your 2 children off with one last penny.
Who told you that, Mr. Chameleon?
Bill Redmond, the paper hanger, who overheard the whole family quarrel.
Oh, he did?
Yes, Mrs. Ashley. But let me warn you. Bill Redmond and your husband are both being watched and protected. If I were you, I'd pass the word along to Cecil, your violent son. Come along, Dave.
Mr. Chameleon.
I'll be back later. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ashley, remember what I said. Bill Redmond and your husband are both under police protection.
Too bad you can't take Mrs. Ashley and her son into custody right now, Mr. Chameleon.
I can't, Dave. There just isn't enough evidence.
I sure feel sorry for that poor old guy. Oh, Wendell Ashley, I mean. He must be scared to death ever since Peter Glade was murdered.
You know, it's so odd. There's something that's bothering me, something I can't put my finger on. Like your reaction to the murdered man, Peter Glade.
Mr. Chameleon,
What's the matter?
I just remembered who Peter Glade looks like. In fact, by gosh, it may be the same man.
The following morning at Central Police Headquarters, we find Mr. Chameleon and Dave Arnold. And Mr. Chameleon is pacing up and down with the restless excitement which means that in his mind, matters are beginning to come to a head. And he is saying,
No question of it, Dave. That's a gang of cold-blooded gold diggers. Not only Alma Ashley, but her children, too.
They certainly have quite a reputation with the Cafe Society crowd.
Yes, they must make Wendell Ashley's life miserable. Just unbearable.
There's been no report yet on the murder knife, eh, Mr. Chameleon?
No, but I'm sure that... Oh, this may be it now, Dave. Chameleon speaking. Yes. Okay, Joe, I'm not surprised. No fingerprints, Dave. I didn't think there would be. The murderer probably wore gloves.
Which leaves us right where we were before. Since everyone in that Ashley house had access to the knife, it came from the kitchen. Any one of them could have murdered the secretary, Peter Glade.
Yes, but we're not quite where we were before, Dave, thanks to your feat of memory regarding Peter Glade. I'm going to do a little more checking on the Ashleys' private affairs, and then...
Then what, Mr. Chameleon?
I'm going back into the Ashley house, Dave, disguised as Bill Redmond, the paper hanger.
What?
I'll pretend that I left some of my tools behind. Unless I am much mistaken, the whole Ashley family will pounce on me.
Oh, you think you can get away with it, Mr. Chameleon?
Yes, I think so, Dave. And I may get cooperation from an unexpected quarter. And I'm counting on Bill Redmond, well, that is my disguise as Bill Redmond, to be the straw that will break the camel's back.
And so, the next day, we find Mr. Chameleon in his disguise as Bill Redmond, the paper hanger. And just before he turns the corner to the Ashley house, he says to Detective Dave Arnold,
Remember, Dave, the minute I disappear into that house, make a beeline for the place. Get in through the back way.
In double quick time, Mr. Chameleon.
Have a couple of detectives stand by, too.
You bet I will, sir.
I may need you the way I've never needed you before, Dave. If things work out the way I expect them to, there may be a near massacre in that dignified-looking Ashley house.
And a few minutes later, as Alma Ashley opens the front door, Mr. Chameleon speaks to her in the voice of his disguise, Bill Redmond.
Hello, Mrs. Ashley. I come back from my tools.
What? Oh, so you came back for your tools. I must say you had your nerve, Mr. Redmond.
Yeah. I need them too, Mrs. Ashley. I can't hang paper without them, and I'm getting them.
Come in.
Who is it, Mother?
Why, Judith, it's Bill Redmond, the paper hanger, who told lies about us to Mr. Chameleon.
Oh, of course.
Who is at the door, Mother? Oh, Bill Redmond. The dirty little skunk who tried to make us look guilty.
Yeah. Now listen, all of you. I got police protection. I'm getting my paper hanger's tools out of here, and you ain't laying a finger on me.
What's happening, Alma? I heard the doorbell and...
You, Mr. Ashley? Mr. Wendell Ashley?
Yes?
Though I've been working here, I ain't had a good look at you before. But I heard you, Mr. Ashley. I'm Bill Redmond, the paper hanger, and I heard you cut your family off without one last penny.
Wait a minute. Are you sure you're Bill Redmond, the paper hanger?
Who else would I be? But, Mr. Ashley, you know something? Now I remember you. You're that stockbroker embezzler my sister once worked for.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Years ago, Mr. Ashley. It happened years ago. You got into a jam and the private detective caught up with you. Yeah. The detective's name was Peter Glade.
Peter Glade?
Yeah. My sister always thought you bribed him, Mr. Ashley.
Shut up! If you think I killed Peter Glade, I didn't. Cecil here killed him. My stepson killed him.
No, I saw you, Wendell, leaving the kitchen with that knife. We all saw you, didn't we, children?
Yes, Mother.
Yes, we did.
Looks like it was you killed Peter Glade, Mr. Ashley. My sister always said you had to pay him hush money.
I guess that was why you hired him as a secretary.
I told you to shut up. This is the last straw.
But I saw you with the knife, Wendell.
You didn't, Elma. You didn't. But I've had all I can take. I've had a lifetime of torture. First from Peter Glade, and then you three. Almond, Judith, Cecil. I'm going to kill you all. I'm going to kill every one of you.
Wendell!
I've had this machine gun hidden in this chest. I used to dream what it would be like to be able to kill you all. And now I'm going to do it. You too, Bill Redmond, with your blasted memory.
But I'm not Bill Redmond. I'm Chameleon.
What?
Get him, Dave. I've got him covered, too. If he starts to shoot, let him have it.
I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. All I want is a little peace.
Sorry, Wendell Ashley. I had to shoot you. Make you drop that machine gun. You'd have murdered all of us.
You took me by surprise when you said you were Chameleon.
Well, I hoped that would happen. Your wife suspected my disguise. She was quick enough to help me out in my accusations. You thought Bill Redmond had a remarkable memory. Well, he didn't. It was Detective Dave Arnold who had the memory, who remembered that Peter Glade was once a private detective with a bad reputation.
He made my life unbearable. He had evidence against me proving I was an embezzler. And he bled me for years.
So you decided to kill him and put the blame on your family, who also had been bleeding you financially for years.
All I wanted was a little peace. After I'd killed him, I was going to find peace.
A murderer, Wendell Ashley, never finds peace. No, you cut your family off with the last penny, hoping to enrage them so that they'd look guilty of Peter Glade's murder. But it's you, Ashley, who's going to pay up to the last penny for the crime of murder.
And with these words, Mr. Chameleon concludes tonight's murder case. If you've ever had difficulty giving your children the proper dosage of aspirin as prescribed by your doctor, you'll be glad to know you can now get genuine Bayer aspirin in a new children's-sized tablet. These new tablets contain half the amount of the regular-size Bayer aspirin tablets, and with them you can conveniently give your child the dosage your doctor wants him to have. Yes, and they're made so you can break them right in half whenever still smaller dosages are required. In addition, they're neither colored nor flavored, and hence cannot be mistaken for candy, and they may be used with complete confidence. For the fact that doctors prescribe Bayer aspirin's single active ingredient, even for the smallest children, shows how gentle and dependable it is. The bottle and carton are plainly marked, children's size Bayer aspirin, 30 tablets for 25 cents. Listen next Wednesday night at this same time for Mr. Chameleon, the man of many faces, in The Little White Lies Murder Case. The part of Mr. Chameleon is played by Carl Swenson, with dialogue by Marie Baumer, from the original story by Frank and Ann Hummert. Music directed by Victor Arden. Your announcer is Howard Claney.
Scientific studies show that the only sensible way to help prevent tooth decay is to keep your teeth thoroughly clean at all times. This is because teeth that are free of decay-breeding deposits and film actually resist decay. And to clean them, use powder. For there's nothing you can get that cleans teeth like powder. Thanks to its remarkable cleaning power, Dr. Lyon's tooth powder almost instantly helps remove deposits and film in which bacteria form. Bacteria that cause tooth decay. So to help prevent tooth decay before it gets started, use Dr. Lyon's tooth powder. Ask for either regular or ammoniated Dr. Lyon's tooth powder.
Listen for Mr. Chameleon in The Little White Lies Murder Case next Wednesday night at this time. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.